Welcome back to Boy Party's 25 for 25, where I count down the 25 best films of the last 25 years. Today, I'm discussing the only comic book movie on this list. Yes, you may be surprised that any comic book movie made the list. One has snuck through. You're not going to be surprised at what it is. It was number one when Brendan and I did our Marvel ranking on the show last year. It is, of course, Sam Raimi's 2004 Spider-Man 2. This is, without doubt, in my opinion, the greatest comic book movie, superhero movie ever made. Let me just say, quick asterisk, there is another film coming up on this list based on a graphic novel. So when I say comic book movie, I mean featuring caped crusaders and heroes. This is, of course, Tobey Maguire's second outing as Peter Parker, otherwise known as Spider-Man. It comes hot on the heels of 2002's first Raimi film, which is also phenomenal. 2007, 3 years later, Raimi brings out Spider-Man 3, which is widely regarded to be not great, but I would beg to differ. I think it's an excellent film. It's a little bit of a step down from 1 and 2, but has a huge amount of character, personality, great sense of humor, really cool visuals. It's just a bit messy. Too many villains, too long. The things everyone says about it in that regard are true, but it's still a film I have a huge amount of affection for. All of these films are. This one, though, is without doubt the best. It manages to operate on two equally remarkable levels. Firstly, it's basically a Vincent Minnelli musical. It is incredibly colorful, hyper saturated, shot on location, full of movement and visual vim and excitement. It's just a really exciting film to look at, and in a very classical Hollywood way. It does feature lots of groundbreaking visual effects, but it's got a lot of incredible kind of graininess to it, and like mid sort of 1950s, 1960s Hollywood studio kind of color and glamour, and honestly looks like a Technicolor movie. And then on the other hand, it's operating as a great post 9/11 superhero movie. Now, when people say post 9/11 superhero movie, they're probably thinking of The Dark Knight, something that tackles the war on terror and fear and how it's manipulated in America and all that. But Spider-Man 2 is a very earnest New York community coming together and celebration of a certain kind of New York idea of heroism. And it might sound very corny and a little bit right-wing the way I'm framing it, but I don't think it is. I think the way this film celebrates the notion of doing heroic things in a non-militaristic way is really refreshing for the time. And Raimi's trying to use the Marvel characters and the comic book origins of Spider-Man to celebrate people like the firefighters and this idea of people who were genuine quote unquote American heroes who were involved in the aftermath of September 11th. So I think this film is really great on that level as well, even if people find it a little corny, but I think it's so romantic it gets away with it. I wrote a review of this film on Letterboxd last time I watched it, where I described it as a movie so romantic it makes me feel sick, and I stand by that claim. I think the relationship between Peter and Mary Jane, played by Kirsten Dunst in this movie, is unbelievably kind of heartbreaking and melancholy in a way where I actually can barely stand to watch. It moves me so tremendously. I find Maguire and Dunst have such incredible chemistry, and the factors at play that are keeping them apart in this film are so strong, but also you can feel their love for each other trying to break through. And then the third movie allows them to be together, throws some spanners in the works, and it all gets a little bit silly, which is one of the reasons that film is so frustrating, because this film allows such a powder keg of romantic tension to build up between them, and ultimately it has the graduate ending, which is so great, when she runs away from her wedding to an astronaut, son of J. Jonah Jameson, to be with Peter. But anyway, I'll run through what happens in this film very quickly for you. This is, of course, the one Sam Raimi film that is making this top 25 list. We do one film per director on this list. I can safely say I don't think any other Sam Raimi films were contenders from this century. His other films include The Gift, Drag Me to Hell, Oz the Great and Powerful, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and his upcoming film, Send Help. I think Spider-Man 2, obviously the frontrunner there to make the list. The movie begins, as I've said, very, very, focused on the romance, but also as a slapstick comedy, with Peter Parker now working as a pizza delivery guy, staring up at a billboard of the love of his life, Mary Jane.
She looks at me every day. Mary Jane Watson. Oh boy, if she only knew how I felt about her. But she can never know. I made a choice once to live a life of responsibility, a life she can never be a part of. Who am I? I'm Spider-Man, given a job to do. And I'm Peter Parker, and I too have a job.
Parker! Parker! No, stop!
Peter's struggling to balance his work as a pizza delivery guy and his college studies with his life as Spider-Man. He's effectively running the Spider-Man hustle as a non-profit exercise, and it's taking up a lot of his time and energy when he should be studying and paying his rent. So he's in trouble with everybody. He's in trouble with his lecturer, played by Dylan Baker.
Look at you, Peter. Your grades have been steadily declining. You're late for class. You always appear exhausted. Your paper on fusion is still overdue.
I know, I'm planning to write it on Dr. Otto Octavius.
Planning is not a major at this university.
And he's in trouble with his landlord, who is one of the funniest characters in these trilogy of films.
Sorry, doesn't pay the rent. And don't try to sneak past me. I have ears like a cat and eyes like a rodent.
But his friend, played by James Franco, who is, of course, Harry Osborn, introduces him to the film's villain, who was initially introduced as an incredibly charismatic character, and this is Dr. Otto Octavius, played by the great Alfred Molina, who is sort of nuclear fusion scientist who's doing some experiments, and Peter is a science student, so he's very interested, and they meet and have a great conversation. And Molina and Octavius and the wife are introduced as these like great New York academic characters talking to Peter about poetry and romance and science, and you get the sense that these are going to be fantastic parental figures for him, because obviously he's orphaned, lives with his aunt, and Molina is absolutely kills in these scenes. And then, of course, after a few experiments gone wrong, he turns bad. He turns into Dr. Octopus, although he's not really referred to that outside of the tabloid newsroom, but he's Doc Ock, the famous Marvel villain, with this kind of crazy mech suit of 8 legs, or 6 legs, and Octopus has 8 legs, and he's a brilliant villain for both Peter to converse with and also to fight.
If you keep something as complicated as love stored up inside, it can make you sick. I finally got lucky in love.
We both did, but it's hardly perfect. You have to work at it. I met him on the college steps, and I knew it wasn't going to be easy. He was studying science, and I was studying English literature.
That's right. I was trying to explain the theory of relativity, and Rosie was trying to explain T.S. Eliot.
But there's a great class narrative in these films as well. Peter is brought up by his Aunt May out in sort of working class Queens, and there's conversations between them that tackle ideas around money and poverty and the fact that she can't necessarily provide financially for Peter or for herself, especially this one really moving scene after his birthday party.
Here, kiddo, happy birthday. You need it more than I do.
No, I can't take that from
Yes, you can. You can take this money from me. For God's sake, it's not much. Now take it. And don't you dare leave it here. Oh, I'm sorry. It's just that I miss your Uncle Ben so much.
So Doc Ock turns bad, and the first thing he does is goes absolutely berserk on a bunch of surgeons who are treating him for injuries, and this is one of the scariest fucking things I've ever seen. The surgeons are all screaming and being thrown around the room. It's insane that this is in a PG film. It's Raimi going full Raimi. But after a fight with Doc Ock that he does not necessarily win, Peter eventually decides that the Spider-Man work isn't worth getting in the way of his relationship with Mary Jane and his studies and everything else. So he quits as Spider-Man, and we proceed to see this brilliant montage soundtracked by Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head.
And when the borderline is tau equals 0, the eigenvalues are someone, please.
0.23 electron volts.
Excellent work today, Parker. Keep it up.
But he is eventually inspired to take up the Spider-Man mantle again and defeat Doc Ock because A, Doc Ock is, destroying the city and the world with crazy nuclear shit that he's up to, but also he gets a great speech from Aunt May about why heroes are so important and important to inspire kids living in the local area. And again, what I was saying earlier about this idea of heroism that maybe is a very early 2000s thing, but does feel very well-meaning to me.
Well, he knows a hero when he sees one. Too few characters out there flying around like that, saving old girls like me. And Lord knows, kids like Henry need a hero. Courageous, self-sacrificing people, setting examples for all of us.
There's a fantastic final set piece, this big fight on a New York overground train. Peter eventually gets knocked out and his Spider-Man mask is torn off, but he is lifted up by the good commuters of New York, and they promise that they're going to protect his identity. And then they say to Doc Ock, "You to get to him, you have to get through all of us." And it's fantastic. It's actually really effective in moving New Yorkers banding together to protect this hero.
You want to get to him, you got to go through me.
And me.
Me too.
And then Peter gets his moment with Mary Jane at the end of the film, and they're accepting that they can't be together, but they clearly have a huge amount of love for each other, and they're lying in his giant web up in the sky, and it's so beautiful and dazzling. And she leaves to go marry the astronaut. But then they do the Graduate ending, and she runs away to be with Peter, and the film ends with her in Peter's apartment looking out the window as he swings away as Spider-Man. And the third movie deals with the consequences of this and the fact that they're now together as a couple. So that's Spider-Man 2, folks. A few other people I'd like to shout out involved in this movie are the cinematographer, Bill Pope. The music is by Danny Elfman, an incredible score building on his score from the first film. Script was written by Alvin Sargent, and honestly, just Raimi deserves so much credit for the unique touch that he put on this trilogy of films. It was made for a budget of around $200 million, which is pretty big for the early 2000s, but it earned back almost $800 million. These three movies are all really fantastic in my opinion, especially the first two. They are the best comic book movies of the last 25 years, in my opinion. Although there is stiff competition, of course, from Nolan's Batman films and also in the superhero space. The Incredibles, a very strong contender too, but Spider-Man 2 is what's made my list. And if you'd like to hear more about this movie and other Marvel movies, do go listen to that Marvel ranking that Brendan and I did about a year ago. It's good fun. That's all for today on the 25 for 25. I'll be back again soon with another movie in the countdown. And you can listen to regular episodes of Boy Party every Tuesday at boypartypod.com.